The cargo hold smelled like recycled air and disappointment, but Finn Decker had grown used to worse. He leaned back in his pilot's chair, boots propped against the console, watching the star charts flicker across his cracked viewport. 3 more days to the Outer Rim colonies. 3 more days of hauling medical supplies and trying not to think about his dwindling credit balance. His passenger sat across from him, perched on a supply crate like she owned the entire ship. Which, considering she'd paid double the standard fare without haggling, maybe she did for the next few days. Nixara of the Catherian worlds, according to her travel documents. What those documents didn't capture was the way she moved like liquid. Steel, or how her golden eyes seemed to catalog every weakness in his defenses. She was beautiful in a way that made him forget basic conversation skills. Feline features that were undeniably alien, yet somehow familiar, with pointed ears that twitched at every sound and a tail that betrayed her mood despite her carefully controlled expressions. Her fur was a deep amber that caught the ship's dim lighting, and when she smiled, which wasn't often, he caught glimpses of fangs that suggested her people hadn't always been civilized. "The heating system in my quarters is malfunctioning," she said, voice carrying that melodic accent that made even complaints sound like poetry. Finn glanced at the environmental controls. "Looks fine from here. Maybe you're just not used to recycled atmosphere." Her ears flicked back, irritation clear. "I have traveled on 17 different vessels. I know the difference between poor air circulation and a broken heater." "Easy there, pet," he said without thinking, the words slipping out like it did, with everyone he found endearing. "I'll take a look after we clear the next jump point." The effect was instantaneous and terrifying. Nixara's ears shot upright, her tail bristling to twice its size. Those golden eyes, narrowed to slits, could have cut through his hull plating. The temperature in the cargo hold seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What did you call me?" Finn blinked, replaying his words. Oh, that was bad. I heard what you said." Each word was delivered with surgical precision. "I am not your pet. Look, it's just an expression." She was off the crate and standing over him before he could finish, moving with predatory grace. "Do you know what that means in my tongue?" "It means domesticated, collared, less than free." Her claws extended, slightly, catching the light. "Do you intend to leash me, human?" Finn held up his hands, suddenly aware of how small his cargo hold felt. "On Earth, it doesn't mean that." "Well, it can, but it's it's complicated." "Explain?" Her tail lashed behind her like an angry whip. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Sometimes it means animal, yeah, but we also use it for someone we're fond of. A nickname, a term of endearment. Like calling someone sweetheart or darling." Her ears flattened against her skull. "You mean to degrade me with affection?" "No, I mean like people call their lover's pet or someone they cherish. It's supposed to be sweet." Nixara's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Then your species insults loved ones with the language of cages. You are more twisted than I thought." "Hey, don't knock it till you try it." She folded her arms, lips pulling, back to reveal the faintest flash of fangs. "I will never be your pet." "Duly noted," Finn said, keeping his voice carefully neutral. "So what do I call you instead, Your Highness?" "Tail menace? Blanket thief?" Her eyes flashed. "Call me by my name. Your name's 37 syllables long and involves throat clicks that sound like a dying engine. I'd rather choke on my coffee than attempt that before breakfast." Her ears flicked, and for a moment he thought he saw the ghost of amusement. "Then say nothing." "All right, nothing." He grinned at her scowl. "How's it going, nothing?" Her tail snapped against the supply crate with a sharp crack. "Insufferable ape. Better than Leashmaster, right?" She turned away with a dramatic huff, but she didn't leave. She could have stormed back to her quarters, tail held high in offended dignity. Instead, she lingered, pacing the small space, inspecting his shelves with obvious disdain, stealing glances at him like she was daring him to say the word again. He didn't. Instead, he pulled a protein bar from his emergency stash and unwrapped it, chewing loudly. The sound made her ear twitch. Are you bribing me with food? Nope, I'm bribing myself. But if it shuts you up, you can have a bite. She glared at him, but her nose twitched. She took a cautious step closer, nostrils flaring. Is that chocolate? Maybe. He held it up, wiggling it just out of reach. Want some, pet? Her claws flexed, and he was pretty sure he saw sparks. Say it again, and I will tear holes in your ship's upholstery. Totally worth it, he said, and tossed her half. She caught it with reflexes that made him briefly reconsider every life choice that had led to teasing a predator in an enclosed space. She sniffed the bar delicately and took a small bite. Her eyes closed in obvious pleasure before she remembered she was supposed to be furious. You think you can buy me like some trained beast? She snapped, even as her ears perked forward. Nope, Finn said around a mouthful of chocolate. But it's funny watching you argue while chewing. Her growl came out muffled by crumbs stuck to her whiskers. You mock me constantly. It's a survival instinct. She swallowed, straightened, and jabbed a claw toward his chest. You will never own me. Not as a pet, not as property, not as anything less than equal. Good, he said simply. I can't even afford to own a goldfish, much less a fox girl with attitude problems. She blinked, thrown off balance. Goldfish? Earth animal. Lives in water. Completely useless. At least you're good for conversation. Mostly. Her lips twitched, a laugh trying to escape, but she strangled it with a cough. Your words are nonsense. And yet here you are, listening. Her tail betrayed her, swishing slower, calmer. She noticed and snapped it still, like she'd been caught smiling at an enemy. Do not mistake proximity for acceptance. I am only here because your cabin is warm. Right. Not because you like my company or my snacks or my devastating charm. Charm? She barked a laugh. You have the charisma of a rusted airlock. Airlocks keep people alive, he pointed out. Best compliment I've had all week. She glared again, but her fangs weren't showing this time. You twist words like knots. Yeah, but you still untangle them, don't you? Her silence was telling. Finn leaned back, crossing his arms. So just to be clear, you're not my pet. Absolutely not. Never will be. Correct. She lifted her chin proudly. And yet, here you are. Warm fed, still standing in my cabin when you could be shivering in your broken quarters. I am choosing convenience. Sure you are. He didn't bother hiding the sarcasm. Her ears tilted, catching the tone. You doubt me? Oh, not at all. I completely believe the proud Cytherian warrior is hanging around just for central heating. Definitely, not because she likes someone calling. Her pet. That would be ridiculous. Her cheeks darkened beneath her fur, the tips of her ears going red. If you dare utter it again. Relax, Finn said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. You win. No more pet talk. Not unless you start acting like one. She opened her mouth, froze, then closed it with an audible snap. Her tail twitched once, twice. I will never act like one, she said finally. Good, because you'd be terrible at fetching sticks. The laugh broke free before she could stop at a sharp bark that startled even her. She covered her mouth with both hands mortified, ears burning red. Finn grinned wide. Knew you had a sense of humor in there somewhere. I do not find you amusing, she muttered, still fighting a smile. Yeah, well, your tale says otherwise. Her treacherous tail was indeed wagging slightly. She whipped it still, furious at her own instincts. Traitorous appendage. Not your pet, huh? Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she snatched the rest of his protein bar with lightning-quick reflexes and perched back on the crate's edge, chewing defiantly while maintaining eye contact. Finn leaned back, satisfied, glad we cleared that up. Her reply was muffled. By chocolate. You are infuriating. Better than being boring. Her tail curled toward him, despite her best efforts, betraying her all over again. 3 more days to the outer colonies, Finn thought. This was going to be interesting. The greenhouse dome hummed with artificial life, its transparent walls offering a view of 3 moons hanging like pearls against the star-drunk sky. Marcus Webb moved between the hydroponic beds with practiced ease, checking nutrient levels and adjusting grow lights. The research station orbited a dead world, but inside his domain, everything bloomed. He was cataloging the evening harvest when he heard it, a soft rustle from the back corner where the medicinal herbs grew tallest. Marcus froze, listening. The sound came again, definitely not the whisper of leaves or the gurgle of water systems. Hello? He called out, setting down his datapad. Stations closed for the night. Silence. Then a crash as someone knocked. Over a tray of seedlings. Marcus grabbed a handheld light and headed toward the disturbance, pushing through curtains of hanging vines. Look, I know you're there. This is a restricted area. If you need medical supplies, the dispensary is... He stopped short. Crouched behind a bank of tomato plants, eyes reflecting his light like silver coins, was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. And she was definitely not human. She was lupine in the most elegant sense, gray fur that shifted to silver in the light, pointed ears that flicked nervously, and a tail that she'd wrapped around herself like a security blanket. Her features were delicate but strong, with high cheekbones and a mouth that promised either poetry or violence. She wore a travel cloak that had seen better days, and her eyes held the kind of wariness that came from running too long. Please don't call security, she said, voice carrying a musical accent that made his heart skip. I mean no harm to your plants. Marcus lowered the light, suddenly aware he was staring. Are you injured? Hungry? She blinked, clearly not expecting kindness. Ah, yes. Both, perhaps. Then come on. He gestured toward his small office at the dome's center. Let's get you sorted. She hesitated, muscles coiled like she might bolt. At any sudden movement, you do not know who I am. What I am. You're someone who needs help, Marcus said simply. Everything else is just details. Something in his tone must have convinced her, because she unfolded from her hiding spot with fluid grace. She was taller than he'd expected, nearly matching his height, and moved with the controlled power of someone trained in combat. In the office's warmer light, Marcus could see she was even more striking than he'd first thought. Her fur was marked with intricate patterns, natural camouflage that spoke of a predator heritage. When she accepted the chair he offered, her tail curled around her feet protectively. I am Vera Nightwhisper of the Northern Pax, she said formally. And I should not be here. Marcus poured 2 cups of tea from his ever-present kettle, offering her one. Well, Vera Nightwhisper, I'm Marcus Webb, station botanist and apparently your host for the evening. Why shouldn't you be here? She rapped, her hands around the warm cup, breathing in the steam. I am ... How do you say runaway bride? Ah, Marcus settled into his own chair, trying to keep his expression neutral. Arranged marriage? Arranged mating, she corrected bitterly. My pack leader's son has claimed me as his intended. The ceremony was to be tomorrow, would have been tomorrow, if I had not fled. And you don't want to marry him? Her laugh was sharp. I do not want to be owned by him, or anyone. Her ears flattened against her skull. He calls me his little wolf pet. Says I will bear strong cubs and look beautiful at his side. That is all I am to him, a prize to be displayed, a possession to be treasured. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. That's horrible. It is traditional, Vera said with forced calm. Among my people, the strong claim the beautiful. It ensures pack survival, genetic diversity, all very logical. Her claws extended slightly, scratching against the ceramic cup, but I refuse to be anyone's pet. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with pain and defiance. Marcus found himself leaning forward, drawn by her fierce independence, even as his heart ached for her situation. So you ran. So I ran. She took a sip of tea, ears twitching at the flavor. Commandeered a transport, used my savings to book passage here. I thought perhaps in human space, things might be different. They are different, Marcus said quietly. Here, you choose who you want to be with, if anyone. Vera's silver eyes met his, searching. And humans do not. Keep pets? We do, but not people, ever people. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Though I have to ask, some humans use pet as an endearment, like calling someone sweetheart or beloved. Would that bother you? She considered this tale, twitching thoughtfully. Context matters, I suppose. From someone who owns you, it is degradation. From someone who loves you. She trailed off, cheeks darkening beneath her fur. I have never experienced the latter. Before Marcus could respond, the lights flickered. Emergency klaxons began wailing, and his communication console lit up with warnings. Solar storm incoming, the station's AI announced. All personnel report. To designated shelters. Estimated duration, 18 hours. Marcus was already moving, shutting down sensitive equipment. We need to get to the shelter. These storms can fry anything electronic, and the radiation. I cannot go to the shelter, Vera said, panic creeping into her voice. If there are other people questions, then we stay here. Marcus made the decision without hesitation. The greenhouse has its own shielding. We'll ride it out. She stared at him. You would risk yourself for a stranger? You're not a stranger anymore, he said, sealing the dome's emergency barriers. You're Vera. And Vera doesn't deserve to be anyone's unwilling pet. The storm hit like the anger of gods. Outside the dome, aurora-like lights danced across the G. Dead world's surface as charged particles slammed into the station's shields. Inside, emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows, and the temperature began to drop as non-essential systems shut down. Marcus gathered blankets from his emergency supplies, while Vera paced like a caged animal, tail bristling with nervous energy. I should not have involved you, she muttered. When they find me, who says they'll find you? Marcus interrupted, settling beside her on the makeshift bed of blankets he'd arranged. This station serves 3 sectors. You could be going anywhere. You do not understand. My intended, Rowan Grimfang, he will not give up easily. He sees me as his property, his destined mate. She wrapped her arms around herself. He will hunt me to the edge of known space if necessary. Then we'll make sure he never finds you. Vera turned to look at him, silver eyes wide. Why? Why would you help me? I am nothing to you. Marcus met her gaze steadily. Because everyone deserves the right to choose their own path. Because no one should be forced into anything against their will. Because ... He paused, heart hammering. Because in the short time I've known you, I've seen your strength, your intelligence, your fierce independence. And the thought of someone trying to cage that spirit makes me angrier than I've ever been. She was quiet for a long moment, studying his face in the red-tinted light. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. On my world, there are stories. Old tales of wolves who chose their own mates, who found partners who saw them as equals rather than prizes. She shifted closer, and he caught her scent wild and clean, like mountain air and starlight. I used to think they were just fairy tales. Maybe they were prophecies, Marcus said softly. Her breath caught. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and touched his cheek with the back of her hand. Claws retracted. You would see me as an equal? Not a pet to be pampered, or a prize to be won. I'd see you as Vera, he said, covering her hand with his own. Brilliant, beautiful, fierce Vera, who grows more amazing every moment I know her. She leaned closer, their foreheads nearly touching. And if I chose you? If I decided that perhaps being someone's beloved pet might not be slavery if it were freely given? Marcus's heart stopped. I'd say the choice is always yours to make. And if you chose me, I'd spend every day proving I was worthy of that gift. Show. She whispered. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious that might break. She kissed him back with growing confidence, her tail curling around his wrist in what he somehow knew was a gesture of trust. When they broke apart, she was smiling, the first real smile he'd seen from her. Perhaps, she said, settling against his shoulder as the storm raged outside, being your pet would not be such a terrible fate if the word comes with love instead of chains. Never chains, Marcus promised, wrapping his arms around her. Just choice. Always choice. She hummed contentedly, and for the first time since her escape began, Vera Nightwhisper felt truly free. Outside, the storm painted the sky in violent colors, but inside their small refuge, surrounded by growing things and new possibilities, she had found something worth running toward instead of away from. The northern packs could keep their traditions. Vera had found something infinitely more valuable, a human who saw her not as a possession to be claimed, but as a partner to be cherished. And if he wanted to call her his beloved pet, well, perhaps some cages were made of love rather than bars. The storm would pass, and they would face whatever came next together. But for now, wrapped in blankets and each other's warmth, they were simply two souls who had found their match in the vast darkness of space, and that was more than enough. The starboard engine gave one final, pathetic wheeze before dying completely, leaving Tobias Chun drifting in space with nothing but momentum and hope. He coasted toward the nearest repair station, a ramshackle collection of docks and workshops, orbiting a gas giant's mining operation, and prayed his credits would stretch far enough to get him spaceworthy again. Docking Bay 7, came the bored voice of traffic control. You're leaking coolant all over my clean space. Sorry about that, Toby replied, wrestling with dead stick controls. She's been temperamental lately. They all are when they're held together with prayers and spite. Welcome to Hendricks Station. Try not to explode. The docking bay was exactly what he'd expected, dimly lit, oil-stained, and smelling of hot metal and desperation. What he hadn't expected was the mechanic who emerged from beneath. A partially disassembled fighter craft. She was vulpine in the most striking way possible, with russet fur that caught the work, lights like burnished copper, and 3 magnificent tails that moved independently, betraying her emotions even when her face remained neutral. Pointed ears twitched at every sound in the busy workshop, and her amber eyes missed nothing as she assessed his limping ship. You the captain of this flying disaster? She asked, wiping her hands on a rag that had seen better decades. Captain Tobias Chun, at your service. And she's not a disaster, she's just ... experienced. One of her tails flicked in what might have been amusement. Experienced is one word for it. I'm Zara Moonfall, best mechanic on this rock. Probably the only mechanic who can get your boat flying again without charging you more than she's worth. Toby studied her as she walked around his. ship, cataloging damage with professional efficiency. She moved with the confident grace of someone who belonged in machine shops and engine rooms. But there was something guarded in her posture, like she was ready to defend herself at a moment's notice. "So what's the verdict, Doc?" Her ears flattened slightly at the casual nickname. "Don't call me that. Sorry." "What's the verdict, Zara?" She relaxed fractionally. "Your hyperdrive coupling is shot, the plasma conduits are corroded, and your life support is held together with duct tape and good intentions. 2 days, minimum. Maybe 3 if we hit complications. And the damage to my wallet? 1,500. Parts and labor." Toby whistled low. "That's steep." "That's fair," Zara corrected, tails bristling slightly. "You want cheap? There's a chop shop on level 3. Course, their work usually fails right about the time you hit deep space. But hey, you'll save a few credits." "Easy there, sweetheart. Didn't mean to offend." The reaction was immediate and explosive. All 3 tails puffed to twice their size. Her ears went flat against her skull, and she bared fangs that definitely weren't decorative. "What did you just call me?" Toby blinked, startled by the vehemence. "Sweetheart? It's just what?" "Just a cute little nickname for the pretty. Animal who fixes your ship?" Her claws extended with an audible snick. "Let me guess next, you'll be patting my head and telling me I'm a good girl when I get your engine running. Whoa, hold on. Or maybe you'd prefer to call me Pet. That seems to be humans' favorite." She stepped closer, and Toby was suddenly aware that her species had evolved from predators. "Newsflash, Captain, I am not your sweetheart, your pet, or your anything. I am a master mechanic with 15 years' experience, and you will address me with respect or find yourself another repair shop." Toby held up his hands, genuinely confused. "I meant it as a compliment. Where I come from, sweetheart is a term of endearment, like calling someone honey or darling." "Endearment?" Her laugh was sharp and bitter. "You mean patronization? Diminutive little names to make the animal feel special, while reminding her she's still property." That's not how I meant it at all." Zara's amber eyes blazed. "Then how did you mean it?" "Because every human who's ever called me sweetheart or pet, or any other cutesy nickname, has expected me to be grateful for their attention. Like I should be honored that the big, strong human noticed the clever little fox." The pain beneath her anger was unmistakable, and Toby felt something twist in his chest. "Who hurt you?" The question caught her off guard. Her tail stilled, ears twitching uncertainly. "What? Someone hurt you? Someone made you think those words were weapons instead of gifts." He kept his voice gentle, non-threatening. "I'm sorry they did that. And I'm sorry I used a word that brought back bad memories." She stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for deception. Whatever she found there made some of the tension leave her shoulders. "It doesn't matter," she said finally. "What matters is my work speaks for itself. I don't need pet names or pretty compliments. Just pay me when the job's done, and we'll get along fine." "Fair enough. But for the record, when I called you sweetheart, it was because you're clearly brilliant at what you do. You're beautiful, even when you're angry, and you have this way of standing that says you could take on the entire galaxy. If it crossed you wrong, those are all things I find endearing." Her cheeks darkened beneath her fur, and one tail gave a small, involuntary swish before she caught it and held it still. "Flattery won't get you a discount. Wasn't looking for one. Was just explaining." She studied him for another moment, then nodded curtly. "Fine. I'll start on your ship tomorrow. Payment up front. Half now, half when she's flying? Full payment now, or find another mechanic." Toby sighed and transferred the credits from his dwindling account. "Guess I'm eating ration bars for the next month." Something that might have been sympathy flickered across her features. "There's a diner on level 5. Cheap food, mostly edible. Tell them Zara sent you and they won't overcharge too badly. Thanks. That single quotes S. Sweet of you. Her ears twitched, but she didn't explode this time. It's practical. Can't have my customers starving before they pay me. Over the next 2 days, Toby found himself spending more time in the repair bay than strictly necessary. He told himself it was because he wanted to monitor the work, but really, it was because Zara was fascinating to watch. She moved around machinery like she was dancing, hands sure and confident as she coaxed his ship back to life. She also had a habit of muttering to herself while she worked, technical observations mixed with creative profanity in at least 3 languages. When she thought he wasn't listening, she'd actually talk to the machinery, coaxing and encouraging like the ship was a nervous animal. There you go, beautiful, she murmured to the hyperdrive coupling. Nice and easy. Nobody's going to hurt you. Toby couldn't help but smile. Does talking to them actually help? Zara startled, 2 of her tails puffing with embarrassment. Machines have personalities. They respond to patience and kindness just like people do. Unlike their mechanics, who respond to patience and kindness with suspicion. Her amber eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Just that you're awful quick to assume the worst about people's motivations. Experience teaches harsh lessons, she said curtly, returning to her work. What happened? Nothing that concerns you. Toby settled more comfortably on his perch atop a supply crate. Humor me, we've got time. Zara was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, without looking up from the plasma conduit she was replacing, I had a partner once. Human, like you. Said all the right things, used all the pretty nicknames. Called me his clever pet, his beautiful little fox, his precious girl. Toby's stomach clenched, but he kept quiet. Turned out he had a thing for exotic species. Liked the idea of having a tame fox to show off to his friends. When? I figured out I was just another trophy in his collection, ... She straightened, facing him with brittle pride. Let's just say he learned that this particular fox has very sharp teeth. Good for you. She blinked, clearly expecting a different response. Good for me? Anyone who treats you like a possession, instead of a person, deserves whatever they get, preferably with interest. Her tails moved restlessly, betraying her confusion. You're not going to lecture me about violence? Or tell me I probably misunderstood his intentions. Did you misunderstand? No. Then he got what he earned. Toby leaned forward, meeting her eyes steadily. Zara, when I call you sweetheart, I probably will again, because old habits die hard. It's not because I think you're my pet, or my possession, or my anything. It's because you're someone I'm growing fond of, someone whose company I enjoy, someone who makes me want to stick around. Longer than my ship needs. Her breathing had gone shallow, ears twitching with nervous energy. You don't know me. I know you talk to machines like they're friends. I know you charge fair prices and do honest work. I know you've been hurt, but you're still brave enough to trust, even if it's just a little. He smiled. I know you sent me to that diner, not because it was practical, but because you didn't want me to go hungry. That was practical, Zara. She fell silent, tails curling and uncurling restlessly. If it makes you uncomfortable, I'll stop. Toby said quietly. Your boundaries matter more than my habits. But I want you to know when I look at you, I don't see a pet or a prize. I see someone extraordinary who happens to be exactly the kind of person I could fall for if she'd let me. The repair bay was quiet except for the hum of machinery and the distant sounds of the station. Zara stood frozen, amber eyes wide and uncertain, like she was balanced on the edge of a cliff and couldn't decide whether to step back or jump. Finally, she cleared her throat. Your ship will be ready tomorrow. And then? And then you leave. That's how this works. What if I didn't want to leave? Her tail stilled completely. What? What if I wanted to stay? Hang around, see if maybe you'd let me buy you dinner at that diner. Maybe find out if you'd be willing to take on a partner in the repair business. I'm handy with a wrench, and I know ships. You're talking nonsense, she whispered. Am I? Because it seems to me like you might be exactly what I've been looking for. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, I might be what you've been looking for too. She shook her head, but he could see the war in her expression, hope battling against hard-learned caution. I don't do relationships, she said finally. Okay, what do you do? I fix things, Toby smiled. Well then, think you could fix a lonely ship captain who's tired of wandering the galaxy by himself? Despite herself, her lips twitched. You're ridiculous. That's been mentioned. So what do you say, sweetheart? Want to take on a challenging repair job? This time, when he used the endearment, she didn't bristle. Instead, one of her tails gave a small, hopeful swish. I suppose, she said carefully, I could evaluate the extent of the damage, see if you're worth the time and effort. And if I am, then maybe I could learn to like being someone's sweetheart. If that someone proved he deserved the title. Toby's grin was bright enough to power the station. Challenge accepted. Zara turned back to her work, but he could see her fighting a smile. Don't get cocky, Captain. I'm a very demanding mechanic. Lucky for you, I'm a very patient customer. Her laugh was soft and surprised, like she'd forgotten how to make that sound. We'll see about that. Outside the repair bay, the gas giant turned slowly in space, painting the workshop in shades of amber and gold. Inside, a mechanic and a captain began the delicate work of fixing something neither of them had realized was broken, their own lonely hearts. And if she occasionally let him call her sweetheart, well, that was between them and the machines that hummed their approval in the background. Epilogue 6 months later, the sign outside the repair bay read Moonfall and Shun, ship repair and salvage. Inside, Zara worked on a stubborn engine while Toby handled the business side of things, their easy banter filling the space with warmth. Hey, sweetheart, he called from the front office. We've got a rush job coming in. Cargo hauler with a blown coupling. Which bay? She replied without looking up, tails swishing contentedly. 7? And Zara? Yeah? Love you too. Her smile was radiant as starlight, and for the first time in her life, being someone's beloved pet felt exactly like freedom.